for once again providing us with this opportunity. Probably like some of you, the reason why we're running a little late today is because the snowplows came through, which was the good news, but I'd already cleared the driveway, so it took my wife and I 20 minutes to get back out again. So we were out there shoveling. Otherwise, I probably would have been here like 25 minutes. Anyway, I've got a few poems to read for you today. I think we had quite a change in the nation on Tuesday. So there was a poem that I had written back in 1964 when I was 17 that I thought I'd read today. It's called The American Way of Hate, 1964. And it was written in 1964, as I mentioned. Young William White is a simple sort of man, being always well-groomed, always being well-groomed in appearance, and an expert chess player, ping pong, an expert with a horseshoe throw. However, he has a flaw in his makeup. He is a Negro. Not being from the South, I've heard things secondhand through newspapers, radio, friends, and TV land. But though the information is constantly repeated type, I still feel that a person's race and religion is always ripe. Ready for the harvest season, picked then left to rot, amidst rumors, demonstrations, and bombings not soon forgot. So as for me, I'd rather be friends with a Negro boy than with a white man who without hate can feel no joy. Thank you. This next poem I wrote on May the 2nd. I'm sure everybody can remember May the 2nd. Of course, we kind of had a repeat. Thank goodness for vacation pay for all the work I missed. Okay. So this is called Blizzard. In fact, I was living in a different place at the time, and I was on Monroe, so I could see 4 blocks from where I was in Monroe all the way out to Haines, except, of course, when you couldn't, which is a lot more visible than I got. Now I'm in a regular neighborhood, so all I can see is across the street. Roads invisible, cars like ghosts in a graveyard, windows matted with ice crystals, and the wind, a freezing, loud, blowing bully, its brutal strength swirling the snow, thrusting it against everything. Our hearts fill with fear. All we see becomes whiteout. I submitted that today to someone, so we'll see what happens. This is a poem I had published a few months ago in Mobius, the poetry magazine. And there's a story behind it. I was in the Air Force, and I may have read this before, so it could be a repeat for some of you, but I was in the Air Force, and in 1968 I was stationed in England, and I was in communications, and there was a guy that had been in Vietnam in 1967 in communications, and he came to our squadron, and he related something to me that caused me sometime later, like 35 years later, to write this. With the encouragement of a very good library person, by the way. Jude Smith, she's in the library in Great Falls, Montana. I was going back to writing, and she said, write about what you know. So this is one of the things that came out of that. It's another morning in Vietnam, 1967. Da Nang Air Base, with a tent city for the troops to live and sleep in. 4:30 a.m., an arm reaches through the mosquito net surrounding a cot and shakes the shoulder of an airman. Time to get up. You've got the early morning detail. There was never any notice of this. It was something that wasn't scheduled until the last minute. The airman's eyes leapt open. He started shaking. He thought about the dream he had had just before he was awakened. He was running, screaming, trying to get back to his family and friends. This was no place to be. You never forget the smell of death. He got dressed and joined a dozen others getting in the back of an army truck. They were being taken to the flight line. No one spoke. Some were crying quietly. This was the worst duty on the base, except when they had to help after an attack. The truck stopped at a large hangar. The men got out of the truck. There were over 100 body bags. It was now 5 a.m. The early morning heat was starting. The smell was so bad it made you throw up or want to pass out. A captain had a clipboard with all the names of the dead. The tags on each bag had to be checked off the list. It got worse if you recognized the name of one of your friends from high school, a buddy from basic training. Sometimes it was a relative, a cousin, a nephew, or a brother-in-law. It took almost 2 hours to load them on the cargo plane for their return to the States. Back in his tent, he couldn't get to sleep. His nightmares were awake in the hot sun, which made him sweat through everything he was wearing. In agony, he thought whether he would leave Vietnam on the Freedom Bird or on the cargo plane. You never forget the smell of death. And there's a few things that my wife doesn't like, so I wrote this one, which I think everybody in here will appreciate. Just plug in husband in the place of the wife. It's called Too Late for Dinner Again. And it was a trip to this library that caused this. When I came in, she was sitting on the couch with a glacial glare that would never be threatened by global warming, as though I had just canceled Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. Then burlesquely throwing up her arms, she said in her best acid rain voice, "It's in the fridge." Once again, I had enjoyed myself too much at her least favorite place, the library. I like to have some humor in the family. Jason, we got a little more time? I only planned for...
I think I got one more.
Huh? One more?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. When I moved here in January, I had to leave my granddaughter, who was, she was kind of young at the time. We've only been here like 9 months, so she's still young, but a little bit older. And in April, they moved, my daughter and her husband and my granddaughter moved to Arkansas. He's working on his master's degree there, so somebody would have been moving anyway, but I wrote this. This is this was the first poem I wrote when I got in town. I wrote it at Borders. Good place to go. So her name's Annalena, so it's called Leaving Annalena. And so we left you, just 9 months old, our hearts saddened, before your first tooth, first unaided step, when all we could understand you say was Dada and Mama. We, your American grandparents, your father being Chinese, moved to a different town in another state, not because we didn't love you, but because it was time to leave. When next we see you, there will be many teeth and steps and words you can't say now. I will hold you with hugs saved many days, and you will touch my scratchy face and call me Grandpa.